All right, well, welcome to tonight's episode of Get to Know the Ugolinis. Woo! Dun, 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 dun. We need our theme music here. Cut to the sitcom, the montage of family pictures, so on and so forth. Just kidding. As you get to know me, you will see that I'm filled with corny jokes. So there you go. No, but in all seriousness, my wife and I we're really excited to be here. Back in the U.S. We're really excited to be with the Northern Virginia Church. We're really excited to be in the West region. We're really excited to get to know everyone. We are really heartbroken in some ways, though, that it has to happen in this format. So, when you're thinking about getting to know, coming into a new church, getting to know new people, making new friends, of course, the picture that I have in my mind's eye is all of us physically together at some kind of public gathering, maybe at the high school on Sunday, maybe a meeting for midweek, maybe just at someone's home. We're in close quarters. There's less than 6 feet between us. We are able to shake hands. We're able to hug. We're able to cough on each other freely and do all those things. Just kidding about the coughing. So I know that is inappropriate in all situations and circumstances. But instead, we're doing it like this, making the most of the opportunities that we have through technology and virtually to just take a little bit of time to share about ourselves and help the members. Should I go first?
I go first.
You can go first.
Yeah.
My wife will go first. Now my wife will share.
Yes. So my family, I was raised Jewish. My mom's side is Jewish, and my dad's side is Catholic. And so we celebrated most holidays, and it was a lot of fun. Growing up, my parents did go to church mostly, and so on and off we would go. But so my view of Christianity was that it was sort of up and down. It wasn't really something that you could consistently depend on, though I did really enjoy it, and I think it did plant seeds of faith in me. By the time I got to college, I was definitely just happy to do my own thing, and I just was fully in the scene of partying and just trying to fit in, and that went on for a while until my junior year. I started to feel very burnt out by the lifestyle that I was living, and I was living in a sorority and surrounded by about 50 other girls, living with 50 other girls, and yet I never felt so lonely in all my life. And in fact, I remembered from my room every Friday night, I could hear across the street was a big chapel, and I could hear people singing late at night in that chapel every Friday night. And I would sort of listen to it and think, oh, that sounds really great. I wonder what they're doing. But there I was in my room, drinking or just trying to figure out how to have a good time. I got to a point where I thought, I can't do this anymore. I was so unhappy. And I knew I had no reason to be unhappy. I had everything that, a person my age would want. And I thought that was probably not a good thing. What's going to happen when I'm older and, life gets harder. And so I started to think more about God, and I remembered the things that I learned growing up. And I thought maybe there's something more to that. And so one evening I just had sort of a desperation prayer to God. And it was sort of along the lines of, God, if you're out there, you can hear me, please do something. And so the next morning I decided I'm going to make good on that prayer and go and try to find a Bible study group or a youth group or something that I can, just as a last resort, to try. And so I left my house and I started on my way. I gave myself a couple of hours before my first class. And about 5 minutes after I left my house, a faithful sister came up to me and invited me to a Bible study. And that's your Nova's very own Becca Manglanauten. And I was just floored.
Becca Slay at that point.
Becca Slay, right. That's how we will always know her.
At that time.
But at that point, I just knew without a doubt that God heard me. He did exist and he loved me. And I knew that my life was forever different. And that was my attitude when I studied the Bible. It was basically just show me what to do. And then later, when I started going to the devotionals, I found myself at that very same chapel on a Friday evening, singing with everyone. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is what I've been hearing from my room. And it's just been amazing ever since. So yeah, that's my testimony. Your turn.
Yes. Well, I was born and raised in the Washington, D.C. area. So I was actually voted most likely to become a priest. That was my superlative coming out of high school. Just to give you an idea of just what I was like and what my spiritual journey had been like up until that point. Funny thing was, when I went on to university, also more locally at the University of Maryland, my life and my lifestyle were anything but. And that was a big point of transition for me personally, being off my own, living on the campus at College Park. I was outside of the bubble and the influence of my family, of my home, and really began to ask that question that can gnaw at so many teenagers. But who am I apart from my family? And what do I really believe apart from what I was raised to believe or what I was expected to believe? And so very much jumped into that culture of the world, that party culture. As much as I could find, I wanted to experience it and see for myself. So about maybe a year into experience and a year of really immersing myself into a worldly lifestyle, which involved drinking, it involved parties, it involved substance use and kind of all the things that you would stereotypically put with a wild college life. Walking, that was me, campus at University of Maryland. And I got stopped by someone on the sidewalk, a very friendly, chatty guy. So friendly and chatty, in fact, I thought that this was maybe someone that I knew or an acquaintance that I'd met from one of my classes. But I didn't know who he was, but he knew who I was. So I initially just started playing along like we were, real friendly and chatty and stuff like that. And then, but a few moments into the conversation, he said, actually, I stopped you because I wanted to invite you out to a Bible study. And at that moment, I had that memory, that very clear memory of, that little prayer to God. God, if you're out there, show me something. And I knew in that moment that I had to respond to this invitation, and I had to say yes. So I did. These Bible studies continued. It was a very mixed experience for me personally, though. It was on one hand very refreshing because I felt like I was learning. I was learning the truth. I could not deny that the things that I was reading in the Bible certainly resonated with truth. Yes, this is the way that the world is. This is the way that I am. I can see how it works. But at the same time, I was also very scared. I was very scared because I knew that I was going to be challenged to change, to make some real changes in terms of just my life and my lifestyle. And I was afraid of that. So I actually studied the Bible off and on over the course of about a year and a half, going through periods of feeling really convicted by what I was reading, and then just going through periods of just I can't do it. I was too afraid. But God's patient. I learned that God respects our freedom. He will reveal the truth to us. But then he'll give us enough freedom to live our own way. And, he gives us rope and we can climb or we can hang ourselves with it, right? As the saying goes. So I experienced that back and forth until, really coming to a point where I realized, God isn't going to force me to make this decision. Life isn't going to zap me with a lightning bolt of faith. I've got to make this decision. I've really just got to choose to surrender myself. And I eventually did. And that was, amazing when that happened. And I was baptized in May of 1999. And it's been just an incredible journey since then, seeing the promises of God. So for a couple minutes, what Cara and I are going to talk about as well is just our relationship and our marriage. How did Paolo and Cara come to be? Do you want to share or should I share?
I'll share.
All right.
So we did meet at the University of Maryland. As he mentioned in his sharing, he studied the Bible for a long time. It was maybe about a year and a half. So I became a Christian December of 98. And myself and the rest of the campus ministry prayed for Paolo Ugolini for many months when he was then baptized in 99 in the spring. And so that's how we met. We were in the same campus ministry. I knew his name very well and was fervently praying for this guy to finally surrender his life. And I was so glad when he did. It turns out we had tons in common. We were the same major. Both were studying government and politics. And we ended up having a class together that first semester. And then we ended up having more classes together, which I thought was a crazy coincidence. Except I later found out that he purposely signed up for the same classes as me, which now is kind of creepy.
But it worked.
Wow, we just have so much in common. We were getting to know each other so well in these classes. So that's how we got to know each other, and we built a great friendship. We started dating. I guess maybe we were friends for about a year. Mm-hmm. Started dating, and then we graduated. I think we started dating right before we graduated. Mm. Dated for about a year and a half, and then got married in 2002. Mm. What did I miss? It's pretty straightforward, actually.
It was pretty straightforward. When I think of meeting Cara, I think of the proverb that says, he who finds a wife finds what is good and receives favor from the Lord. And it's that idea of favor. Cara in my life is just the greatest work of grace and blessing outside of my salvation that I have. Something that I certainly don't feel deserving of. Just feel blessed by God in, and I'm very grateful for it.
Me too.
Just a little bit that I'll add is leading up to meeting with Cara was an interesting time of my life. When I was going through Bible studies, and I was starting to really make decisions to turn my life around. The guys sat down with me and did a Bible study about Christian dating and marriage. And we went through a couple passages that really, had the whole conversation about, hey, when you turn your life to God, you're going to be committed to just, dating and marrying, someone else who's committed to God as well. And so we went through this Bible study, and I told the guys, I said, hey, look, that's great. But you know what? I don't think I may ever get married.
Most likely to become a priest, remember?
Well, it had nothing to do with priesthood per se. But what it was is, I think coming out of my situation in the world, I had really become so jaded towards guy-girl relationships. The idea of dating and those interactions, and my experiences in the world were just, so off that I just kind of felt like, forget about it. And I even told the guys, I said, I think I might be like the Apostle Paul, who is just single and celibate and devoted to the Lord, and that's it. And the guys had a good laugh at that comment during the Bible study. But that's where I was at. That's my orientation. But then funny thing is, it was like a couple of weeks later, I came back to them and I was like, guys, I think Cara's really, really awesome. And so, of course, they had another big laugh, another big chuckle, and reminded me what I had said not too long before. But that part of my life turned around quickly. And again, it's been a blessing. Very grateful for my wife and for our family. Yes. Speaking of wife and family and marriage, that's one of our little ones trying to break into the study while we're doing this. And she's mouthing words to us through the glass, which we do not understand.
Very sad.
Great.
No, you can wait till we leave to go to Virginia. We'll edit
Awesome.
that out.
Yeah, great. Maybe we. So we're so excited to be in the full-time ministry. This was a calling that was, at least for my part, put into my life by God. When I got baptized, I did not have a dream to grow up to become a preacher. I didn't have this vision for myself of going into the full-time ministry or being an evangelist. Like I shared before, I was off to law school and ready to pursue that dimension of my life as a career. Now, becoming a disciple and getting baptized, I felt like I'm in the full-time ministry, just not getting paid for it in a leadership role. But as a university student and then as a graduate student in law school during those years, both for myself and my wife, we always made ourselves available to volunteer, to work with youth ministry, to work with students and campus, so on and so forth. So we had these sort of part-time stints serving and working in the ministry on and off for a couple of years. Neither of us were in the full-time ministry from about 2003 to 2004. We got married during that time, and we were settling into just regular secular jobs. And then in 2004, the opportunity was presented to Cara and I to go into the full-time ministry. My wife, being the pure-hearted, spiritually courageous and faithful woman that she is, wanted to do it and wanted to go for it. And I was afraid. I was scared for a number of reasons on a number of levels. But after just a time of wrestling and real soul searching, decided to go for it and just to answer this calling of the Lord, and haven't looked back ever since. We spent 10 years in the great Montgomery County Church of Christ and have so many great memories of doing ministry there. Served in teens, served in campus, became region leaders, started getting involved in teaching and different kinds of dimension of the ministry. It was really, really great. We started to get the bug, I think it was around 2009, 2010, to just start praying to God. God, what else do you have for us? Are we in the place that you want us to be? Things were going fine in Montgomery County. We were happy. We weren't trying to flee from anything, but just wanted to make sure that we're still living by faith and that we're growing. So we just kind of put this prayer out to God. One thing led to another through a series of answered prayers and some different conversations and events. The opportunity in Glasgow, Scotland presented itself. And as we began to investigate this opportunity abroad and overseas, it's just amazing how many prayer boxes started to get ticked the more and more we looked into this opportunity. And it really became clear to us that this is something that God is calling us to do. And so in 2015, is it 2015, right?
Yes.
So 2015. That was after about 10 years full-time in the ministry in Montgomery County. We moved to this small, courageous, loving frontier church in Glasgow, Scotland, and just started a whole new adventure and a whole new chapter, getting to know the UK family churches, all great folks over there. And it just took us so far out of our comfort zone in so many ways. It was really amazing. Again, it was a small church, so we were coming from a big church. We had to learn the small church dynamic. Scotland is a very secularized society. Even though the history of a place like Scotland has a lot of religion embedded into it, you walk downtown, you see churches, you see cathedrals on almost every street corner. Half the people walking past them have never set foot in a church. And so some of the statistics there are alarming in terms of where people are at self-identifying in their faith. But it's a society and a culture that has shifted very much towards atheism, skepticism, secularism. So just learning how to do church and how to do ministry, how to reach out to people, how to find seekers was something that took us so far out of our comfort zone in a good way. We just had to break a lot of the paradigms that we thought we knew about church, about ministry, about the gospel, think outside the box, try new and different things. We learned so much about love and faith and friendship and relationships. The members of the Glasgow Church of Christ, the folks who have been there, they're heroes to me. And it was just such an honor to serve with them and to be with them. We always had it in our hearts, though, when we left, that we would come back and wanted to resume ministry in the Washington, D.C. area. This is home to us, and we've just always been very moved and compelled by the vision and the dream of building church here in this place. God, again, opened doors and moved things to make this opportunity possible. And started to get to know the Omays, and they're great. We're so happy to be with them and be in leadership with them. And it's really great coming to Northern Virginia because we feel like we've got just the best of both worlds here. There are people that we know from years past who are in Northern Virginia, old relationships that are being rekindled, but then also all of these brand new relationships that we have, new best friends to make. And so on the one hand, we're coming back to something that we feel like we know, that we're familiar with, and yet at the same time, it's completely new and completely different. And we're just so excited about what God has in store. Anything you'd like to add, hon?
Yeah, I'll just add one last thought there. Last summer, when we were still exploring where we might come back to in the States, I just so happened to be in Northern Virginia. I was attending a conference, and I ended up at the church service that you all had when the McKeans announced their retirement, and they announced that the O'Mays would be leading the church. And I was there along with a friend of mine from Scotland who joined me. And I was so moved by the service and just by the way that that was all done. I was so touched by it. It actually brought tears to my eyes. And I thought, what a great church. And at that point, I had no thought in my head about that we would be coming to Northern Virginia. So when that all came about, I just thought, oh, that's so amazing that I was actually there that day. And it was like God was giving me a little prequel of what was to come.
Awesome. It was a prequel of what is to come, and that's actually a really great transition to what I would like to share here for just the last few minutes of this video and of this recording, and that's to talk a little bit about what is to come in terms of the West region and some of the vision that we would like to implement here moving forward. So as you probably know, we're going to be doing regional midweeks on first and third Wednesdays of each month. We're really excited about that. That's going to give us an opportunity to really speak to and address some of the localized needs and some of the more localized spiritual situations, what we want to do, what we want to implement, and what we want to develop. But I think about the story of my life, just what God has done from the beginning up until now. I think about Cara's story. I think about how our stories merged and joined together. And now there's this story of our life and this story of our faith that is happening together. And I'm reminded of this fantastic passage in the book of Ephesians that I just want to share, one passage here. The book of Ephesians, chapter 2, in verse 10, it says, "For we," and when he says we, in verse 10, it says, "For we," and when he says we, he's talking about just the collective of Christians. "For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." I love this passage. To me, this passage speaks about destiny, this grand vision and this grand plan that God has had and has for my life. When God created each and every one of us, he made us something very unique. There has never been someone like you before ever in the history of the universe. And when you're gone, there will never be anyone like you ever again in the history of the universe. Your life is a very unique and special story that is being written. And the question is it a story being written with God or without God? And as this passage says, when we are in Christ Jesus, we're created as God's workmanship to do good works. That term workmanship is a very special word in the Greek. The Greek word is actually poemia, and it's spelled Poemia. And this is, from this Greek term, is actually where we get the English word poem. And when we think of a poem, again, we're not just thinking of something that someone has made. We're thinking of a work of art. It's a term that actually refers to something like a masterpiece. So when it says we're God's workmanship, it says we are God's masterpiece. Our lives are a poem that God is writing. A narrative that's very unique, very special, very one of a kind. God does this individually in our lives, and then he pulls and brings us together in the church. And then we become God's masterpiece together, this incredible work of art that he is fashioning. And we're not just passive in it, we're also active in it, right? We do the good works. And so it's us and God writing this incredible narrative, this incredible story of our lives, story of our faith together. Something amazing. What we're going to be doing in these regional midweek times is we're actually going to be doing a series from the book of Ephesians, a multi-part series called God's Masterpiece. And what we want to do is just use some thoughts in a biblical framework to really lay out the amazing plan that God has for us. And this series is going to give us an opportunity just to address a whole range of things, from the motivations that we live for in our lives, from our hearts for God, to our one another relationships, to just the functional plan of how we want to do and how we want to organize ministry in a way that's going to lead to maturity, growth, and bringing glory to God. But the discussion point and prayer point that I would like to put before each and every one of you to take up in your house churches is this. Think of your house church, your small group, as a poem. This great narrative that God has begun to write as He has brought all of the individual members of your house church together, part of that masterpiece of God. What are some of the great highlights for you so far in the story and narrative of your house church? When you think of your group, what is something beautiful that you see and that you're experiencing there that God has done? So the discussion point is for everyone in your house church to take some time to think about that and share that point. And then the prayer point is this, right? Because again, God's masterpiece is something that He's doing with us. We're not just passive in it, we're active in it as well. So now thinking forward and moving forward and projecting forward, when you think about this great masterpiece that God is creating, what is something that you'd like to pray about in terms of your house church and your small group? Something that you'd like to see done, something that you would like to see changed, something that you would like to see grow, so that way it can come more and more and more this work of beauty and this work of art that God is doing together. So hopefully you guys can have some great discussion and some great prayer time around that point. And we look forward to the next regional midweek time where we will jump in earnest in this next series, Making God's Masterpiece. Love you. God bless.